I'm Diane Moore. I'm 68 years old, a mother, a grandmother, and a woman who thought she had seen every kind of family betrayal. But that morning at Boston Logan, standing at the departure gate, I realized I was wrong. I had paid $33,000 for what was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime family trip to Paris. Hotels, flights, tours, Christmas dinner in a French restaurant, everything. And yet, when the boarding call came, I was told I didn't have a ticket. Just like that. The people I loved, the ones I thought I was making memories with, were walking toward the jet bridge without me. For a moment, my chest felt hollow. My hands shook, and I thought I might collapse under the weight of it. I could have cried. I could have begged. I could have pulled out my credit card and paid for another seat on the spot. But something in me shifted. That morning, I decided I wasn't going to react. I was going to respond, and that response would change everything. After Robert, my husband, passed away, the invitations from family meant more than anything. They weren't just plans on a calendar. They were proof that I was still wanted, still needed, still part of something larger than myself. So when my son Ryan called a few months before Christmas with the idea of a family trip, my heart opened instantly. He painted a picture so vivid that I could almost see it, the lights strung along the Champs-Élysées, croissants at a cafe table in the morning, laughter echoing over the Seine. He spoke about how Lily would be off to college soon, how Noah was growing up so quickly, and how we needed memories while we still had the time. My practical mind whispered that it would be expensive, far more than Ryan and Kayla could afford, but I silenced that thought. I wanted to believe this was about love, not money. Of course, deep down, I knew who would pay. I always had, and without hesitation, I said yes. Kayla, my daughter-in-law, offered to handle the bookings. She carried herself like someone who had everything under control, and I convinced myself it was easier to let her take the lead. I shared my card details, telling myself this was my Christmas gift to the family. First-class flights, luxury hotel, tours, fine dining, nothing felt too much when it came to creating memories together. But soon after, the red flags began to show. The first was secrecy. Anytime I asked about the hotel or the itinerary, Kayla brushed it off with a smile that felt practiced. She always said she had it covered, that I didn't need to worry. I wanted to believe her, so I did. The second came when she asked for a copy of my passport. She said it was for the airline reservations. I sent it over without thinking, proud of myself for knowing how to take a photo and text it. A few days later, she called again, telling me the hotel had overbooked and she had to switch us to another one. She rattled off a new confirmation number, but her voice had the same rehearsed tone as before. The third was the one that cut deep. At the mall one afternoon, I happened to see her sitting with her sister. I wasn't close enough to catch every word, but I caught enough. I heard her say that this trip was about teaching me a lesson that money doesn't buy a place where I'm not wanted. She dismissed the fact that I had spent over $3,000 brushing it aside like it was nothing but a tool to control me. I froze in that moment, shopping bags heavy in my hands, hoping I had misunderstood. But the truth was already there, heavy in my chest. I ignored it, convincing myself I was imagining things. Because what else could I do? Admit that my own son and daughter-in-law were plotting to leave me behind? Looking back now, I should have listened to the unease in my stomach, but I didn't. I wanted to believe I belonged, and that choice would set the stage for everything that came next. At 7:15 in the morning, the boarding call echoed through Boston Logan. I stood at the gate, suitcase in hand, ready for the Christmas trip I had dreamed about for months. That was when the truth finally showed itself. Kayla's voice was polished, almost too calm, and Ryan couldn't even meet my eyes. I was told there had been a mix-up. My reservation wasn't there. My ticket didn't exist. For a second, I felt my chest cave in. The noise of the airport blurred, and all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. People bustled around me, families hugging, children tugging on their parents' arms, while I stood frozen in place. The thought hit me hard. I had paid $33,000 and I was never meant to be on that plane. Old habits wanted to take over. I wanted to plead, to insist, to fix it somehow. But I stopped myself. I wasn't going to break down in front of them. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. So I smiled, wished them well, and turned toward the exit. By 8:05, I was in a taxi heading back home. 47 minutes. That's what the ride gave me. And in that time, I thought about something I had learned the hard way in life. A reaction is emotional and messy. A response is deliberate, careful, and lasting. That ride gave me the space to choose which kind of woman I wanted to be that day. When I walked into my kitchen, the house felt silent, steady, almost like it was waiting for me. I set my suitcase down, brewed a cup of tea, and opened my laptop. If Kayla thought she had outsmarted me, she had forgotten one thing. Every single booking, every hotel, every flight, every tour had been made in my name and paid with my card. And that meant I had control. The first call I made was to the hotel. 2 adjoining suites at a luxury property in Paris, nearly 3,800 in total. My heart was pounding, but when the woman on the line confirmed the flexible rate with no cancellation fee, I felt a surge of calm satisfaction. The reservation was canceled, and the full refund was on its way. The flights were harder. 5 business class tickets at $3,900 each. With penalties, I would still recover around $14,000. That was enough for me. I moved down the list. A private guide at the Louvre, a river cruise on the Seine, a day trip to Versailles, one after another. I canceled them all. Each confirmation email felt like a small victory, like taking back a piece of the dignity they tried to strip from me at the gate. Finally, I typed a letter. Not for email, not for text. A note, written on real paper, folded carefully, slipped into Kayla's makeup bag while she wasn't looking at the airport. I wanted her to find it later, once the unraveling had begun. Once they had wasted hours thinking it was a mistake. The note explained that if they didn't want me on the trip, then they didn't want my money funding it either. I sat back, tea in hand, and breathed for the first time that day. My response had begun. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment at the gate. At 2:47 in the morning, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Paris was 6 hours ahead, and I knew immediately it was them. I picked it up and saw Ryan's name. His message was frantic, claiming there had been a mistake at the hotel. They were standing in the lobby with luggage and crying kids, unable to check in. I placed the phone face down on the nightstand. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to fix the problem. Over the next few hours, the messages piled up. Confusion turned into panic. Panic turned into pleading. And finally, pleading turned into anger. Kayla's tone hardened with every voicemail, as if she still believed I would fold under pressure. But I had no intention of saving them from the mess they created. Instead, I made breakfast. I pulled out the skillet, mixed the batter, and made pancakes the way Robert used to like them. Extra butter, real maple syrup, fresh strawberries. I sat alone at my kitchen table, eating slowly while the phone vibrated against the counter. With every bite, I felt steadier. Later that day, I heard the one voice that almost broke me. My granddaughter Lily managed to call from a lobby phone. She spoke softly, telling me she was scared and didn't understand what was happening. I could hear her trying to stay calm, but underneath it was the trembling of a 16-year-old girl caught in the middle of something she never asked for. My heart ached. For a moment, I nearly gave in. But I reminded myself this wasn't her fault, and it wasn't mine either. Her parents had put her in that position, not me. I explained gently, in words she could handle, that the situation wasn't about her or Noah. It was about choices her parents had made. She was quiet for a long time, and then she whispered that she loved me. When the line went dead, I sat in silence, staring at the snow falling outside my window. I had wanted to teach Ryan and Kayla a lesson, but hearing Lily's fear made me realize something deeper. Their selfishness had consequences that stretched far beyond me. I knew then that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting the grandchildren I loved from being used as pawns in a game they didn't choose to play. 2 days later, the phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Ryan or Kayla. It was a number I didn't recognize, with a faint international code. A man with a French accent introduced himself as a police inspector. My stomach clenched. For a moment, I imagined hospitals, accidents, terrible news. But no, it wasn't that. He explained calmly that my son and his family were being held at a station in Paris. The hotel manager had called authorities because they tried to leave without paying their bill. About 2,000 euros, he said, roughly $2,400 in dollars. Ryan and Kayla claimed there had been a mistake with their travel arrangements, but the truth was simple. They were broke, stranded, and humiliated. I sat at my kitchen table, phone pressed to my ear, trying to steady my breath. My grandchildren were there, too. Not in legal trouble, but unable to leave until the bill was paid. I pictured Lily, just 16, sitting in a foreign police station, watching her parents argue in a language they didn't understand. My chest tightened. My best friend Paula had warned me about moments like this. She told me that if I gave in, I would only teach Kayla that dragging the children into it would always make me cave. And she was right. Paying that bill would reward bad behavior. But what about Lily and Noah? Could I let them spend Christmas Eve in a government facility? Away from any sense of safety or comfort, I chose mercy, but with boundaries. I told the inspector I would pay only for the basic room and meals that had already been consumed, nothing more. No extras, no luxuries, no loopholes, just enough to free the children and let them sleep somewhere safe. When the payment cleared, relief swept over me. But it came with anger too. Anger at myself for allowing Kayla to manipulate me through the only weakness I still had: my love for the kids. I knew she had found my pressure point, and I hated that she could still use it against me. That evening, Ryan left me a message. His voice was calmer, quieter. He admitted they had been wrong, and for once, he didn't ask for more money. He said he'd found a way to get them home, even if it meant economy seats and swallowing his pride. For the first time in a long while, I heard a trace of the sun I remembered before all the manipulation began. It gave me a glimmer of hope, but hope wasn't enough. I knew I needed more than temporary fixes. I needed real boundaries. When they finally made it back to the States, I knew things could not return to the way they had been. For years, I had been handing out checks without hesitation: mortgage payments, car loans, private school tuition, even groceries when they claimed money was tight. The numbers blurred together until one afternoon I sat down and added them up. Last year alone, I had given them $47,000. Over 5 years, it was more than $2,000. That realization hit me harder than Kayla's smug words ever could. So, I made a choice. I called my attorney and scheduled a meeting for 2:30 in the afternoon. I walked into his office carrying a folder thick with bank records, receipts, and notes. For the first time, I wasn't there to ask how to help someone else. I was there to ask how to help myself. We went over everything in detail. The first step was to protect Lily and Noah. They were innocent, and I wanted their education secure. We set up trusts that would cover college and beyond, airtight accounts that their parents could never touch. I felt a weight lift just knowing that no matter what happened, the kids would have a future free from financial manipulation. The second step was harder but necessary. I removed Ryan and Kayla as beneficiaries. My home, my investments, my savings, everything else would be directed to charities that truly valued what I had to give. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about ending a cycle that had drained me for too long. I also had my attorney draft a letter, a formal notice that the support was over. No more mortgage help, no more emergency checks, no more bailouts disguised as family generosity. They were adults with jobs, and it was time they lived like it. When we met at my house to discuss it, the tension was thick. Ryan sat quiet, scrolling his phone like he wished he could disappear. Kayla fumed, insisting that what I had done in Paris had humiliated them beyond repair. I didn't argue. I simply explained what I had realized, that support without respect isn't love, it's exploitation. The conversation grew heated, but I stayed calm. For once, I wasn't trying to fix it. I was simply stating the truth. Kayla's final card was to threaten that I'd never see Lily and Noah again. My heart ached, but I reminded myself time was on my side. In 2 years, Lily would be 18, and soon after Noah would follow. Love couldn't be erased with threats. The shift was undeniable. For the first time, I felt like the parent again, not the ATM. And I knew this wasn't just a boundary, it was a new beginning. 6 months later, I sat in my garden with a cup of coffee, the morning sun warming my shoulders. For the first time in years, my life felt quiet, not lonely, peaceful. The old weight of constant demands had lifted, replaced with space to breathe and think about what I wanted, not just what others expected from me. That week, I received a letter from Lily. She had been accepted into college, her tuition fully covered by the trust I set up. Her words were full of excitement, gratitude, and hope. Reading her letter, I realized that despite everything, love had found its way through. Noah called me often too, telling me about his soccer games and his latest drawings. He was only 14, but he carried a warmth that reminded me why I had fought so hard to set boundaries in the first place. My relationship with Ryan was polite, distant, but no longer strained by money. We could talk about weather, family updates, and life without the undercurrent of another request for financial help. Kayla and I no longer spoke, and that silence felt more like a gift than a punishment. In that garden, with the birdsong around me, I understood something simple but powerful. Peace doesn't come from fixing other people's problems. Peace comes from knowing your worth, setting your limits, and protecting your heart. I was no longer paying for love, and in that choice, I had finally found freedom. Looking back on everything, I realized that setting boundaries isn't just about saying no, it's about protecting your heart and your life. For years, I thought generosity meant giving without question, believing that love could be measured in dollars. But love isn't bought. It's shown through care, attention, and respect. I learned that people who truly love you will find a way to be present without exploiting you. The rest, those who see you only as a source, aren't worth the cost of your peace. Sometimes, the hardest lessons come wrapped in family ties, and sometimes, the strongest gift you can give yourself is permission to say no. If my story resonates with you, I hope it inspires you to reflect on your own boundaries. Take a moment to ask yourself, where in your life have you been giving too much? And how can you protect your heart while still showing love where it's deserved? Share your thoughts, leave a comment, and know that your story matters as much as mine.